And today I am riding the Bonneville T120 from Triumph. This is a 2017 model. How do we like it? Keep watching to find out. Now, I think I've made my feelings clear on this channel already regarding what is now being called the modern classic. So I'm not going to go on too much about that. Needless to say, it's not my cup of tea. And as you can see from the Bonneville here, it is very modern classic. Don't get me wrong, it's actually quite a nice looking bike. I think it's a big improvement on the previous models of Bonneville. The only thing I don't like, it's when they insist on trying to con you that this is like an air-cooled bike. It's not, it's liquid-cooled. Doesn't need the air-cooled, they're just there for purely an aesthetical point. Also, the throttle bodies, which look like carburetors, are back. Now, who are you trying to kid? They don't make carburetted bikes anymore outside of scooters because they don't pass emissions tests, and that's why they are. I don't mind a nod to the past, but when they're trying to fool you, that kind of annoys me a little bit. But that is all I'm going to say negative on the looks wise, because it is purely a subjective matter, looks, and some people will think this is a very sexy bike and others won't. But it does, I think it actually does look quite nice for what it is, a modern classic. It's what to me looks what old motorcycles used to look like when I was growing up, but of course then they were modern bikes, and it's not necessarily bad for that. It certainly has a nice poise, nice pose. It's yeah, looks wise from your classics, not too bad. I particularly do like the nice brushed alloy here that it's put on the side cases on both sides. Very nice touch, that, and the little sort of alloy infills, things like that. Very, very nice. The only thing that kind of worries me about that is, how is this going to last in the UK weather? And if anyone who, you know, tends to watch a lot of motor vloggers, especially from the UK, you will have no doubt heard of a fella called Captain Rambunctious, who rides a current model Triumph Thruxton R, which has the same 1200 high torque engine as this. And he's been riding his for over a year now, so he's done a winter on it, and he's had to change out his side engine cases because they have pitted and corroded, because he rides this as his main transport all year round. And it's just, you know, and I don't think with all this exposed metal that it would be a good choice for a winter bike, not in the UK, because there's just salt all over the roads and that's going to get corroded, and it'd be a terrible, terrible shame to ruin the classy look of this bike with a load of corrosion and pitting. This is a newish bike. It's done less than 300 miles, so the downpipes have yet to blue in, which they will, and that'll improve the look for me. You know, nice set of blued up pipes. Not a big fan of the pea shooter exhaust, however. I never have been. Not when they were a kind of standard fitting on motorbikes back in the 70s. Used to see them all over the place. I don't like the look of them. They look a bit. I'd prefer a more megaphone style tailpipe on a bike like this. But it is what it is. It is what it's come with, and these bikes are made to be played with by the customer to get them to how you like them. But even though it's a modern classic, it does have modern touches, like, well, the main dipped beam is actually incandescent, but if I can keep it in shot, when you put high beam on, the incandescent is switched off and it's replaced by these high intensity LEDs. Now I don't know what that's going to be like at night, and why it would turn off the incandescent. You think you'd want it all on. I don't understand that. Very similar to the Street Triple I tested. That seemed to have a similar sort of issue, where you put it on the high beam, it was actually, it wasn't as bright. But anyway, but we're not going to be riding it at night, so we won't find out anything about that. On everything else, it's pretty much your standard modern classic. It's got a steel trellis frame. Sorry, not a trellis frame, it's a double cradle, I think is what we would call that. It's just tubular steel, no exotic metals. Same with the swing arm, it's just a steel swing arm with these old school twin shocks on the back, and nice touches on the metalwork on the foot pegs, and the levers all seem very nice. It all seems nice alloy. But this bike starts out at 10,300, which seems a lot for not a lot of bike. For basically for that money you can get a street triple RS. What are you going to buy, one of these or a street triple RS? I know what I'm spending my 10,000 on if that was me. But again, it's how much you want to buy into a classic lifestyle. If this is what ticks your boxes on a visual footprint, then this will be your thing. Myself, I prefer a more modern bike. I don't like to live in the past. I've been to the past. I was there when it happened, and it wasn't that good. But yeah, for the rest of the bike, twin discs up front for this year. The Bonneville new church I tried last year only had a single disc up front, but this has got a bigger engine, more power, so it's put twin Nissin calipers on there just to add to the stopping duties. And yeah, pretty much pretty bike. I'll grant it that. It's not the worst looking hipster chariot I have seen. Now on board this bike, it is a very small bike, I've got to say. I am completely flat-footed with quite a considerable bend in my knee, so I think this bike would suit anyone of any sort of shape or size really. I'm 6'1" and 1/2 inch, and it feels a little too small for me, but you get used to these things. Bikes were always this size back in the day, and we somehow managed. So anyone of a smaller stature could ride this no problem. And it's got, I'll just nip off again, it's got a proper old school bench seat, which I can scooch back on that a bit. It doesn't feel too bad, and it's actually not too uncomfortable either for a bench seat. They've got some kind of nice memory foam in there or something, so unlike bench seats of old, it's actually quite comfy. Let's fire her up and let's see what she sounds like. Triumph, so it's clutch in. Yeah, that parallel twin has got a nice grumble to it. I'm not the biggest twin fan, especially not parallel twins, because I kind of rode them when I first set off on my motorcycle adventures over 30 years ago, and I kind of thought I was over them, but it's always nice to ride something different, and this is certainly different, having I think it's a 270-degree firing order, which is going to be the same as the Thruxton, so it has that nice sort of almost like a V-twin sound rather than a parallel twin. Well, getting underway, the clutch has a very light feel to it, which is always a good thing, I find, especially on such a big engine as this. I'm surprised it's not got a hydraulic clutch, but it does okay without one. And the gears snicking lovely, both up and down. The gear lever has got a nice throw to it. It's it's not a sporty gearbox, so it does require quite a large foot movement to get it going, but there's no clunk, no grind, and it does snick into the gears, and you can feel it positively engage as well, down and up. Now this, the 1200cc, what Triumph called a high torque engine, reputedly has 105 newton meters at around 4,500 rpm. It redlines at 7. You know, so it always catches me out with twins, this, because I'm so used to riding large capacity 4s and things, triples, and things that rev up a bit. It always catches me out when you can ride a bike such as this, you know, at like 1500 rpm at 30 miles an hour. It takes me a little bit of time to recalibrate my brain to the way such a low revving high torque engine such as this delivers its power. It's almost surreal that you can plod along at 1500 rpm in third gear at 30 miles an hour and rev it up to overtaking speeds without even having to change gear, which is really what you want on a street bike, to be honest. It's nice just to be able to relax a little bit, not have the frantic rushing around of changing gears and rev matching downshifts like you do on a sports bike. It's a completely different way of life riding a bike like this than something sportier, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Now this is, as I said earlier, this is where it's not quite done 300 miles yet, so it's not even remotely run in, which means it's got to be restricted to certain revs, which, you know, it doesn't have a restrictor on it, but it gives you a little diagram on the tank of Triumphs of at what mileage you can rev it to what RPM. Now it's a demo bike, and I've got it because my Triumph Tiger's in for its service. It's not a bike I would have chose, it's what we had available. And I would have preferred it if it had been properly run in with a few thousand miles on it, so it was nice and loose and you get a better idea of what it's like at the full rev range. But I'm not an arse, I'm not going to screw a brand new demo bike just for my own titillation. I think it's a bit uncruel on the Triumph dealer who have given me this while they're servicing mine. But saying that, it's saying I can rev it to 4,000 rpm and it develops max torque at 4.5, so I'm not exactly missing a massive amount, and it won't kill it to go to 4.5. But yeah, I mean, I've been sat in third gear for the last couple of miles going around these country roads, and it's like the perfect gear just to plod around. I can take slow corners and accelerate out of them, and it will take me, going up to 4,500, it's taking me to nearly 70 miles per hour. And now I'm getting used to it. It feels really nice, actually. It's a pleasant, unhurried way to sort of get around, but it kind of catches you out, and it always catches me out on twins, is you don't feel like you're going very fast, because I'm used to something that's going whereas this is like plodding away, but all of a sudden, oh crikey, I'm doing 70 miles per hour and you don't even notice it. The engine's got a lot of character. It's almost like, because of that 270 firing order, you can feel each individual engine pulse almost, a bit like riding a Ducati V-twin, which is you know, it gives the engine a bit of something about it to, you know, to like. It's the old school parallel twins were always a 180 firing order, so one piston's up, one piston's down, which might be better for balancing, but it kind of led to a very bland feeling engine, whereas this 270 firing order's gonna need some kind of internal balancer shaft or something to stop it vibrating itself to death. But whatever they've done to do that, they've managed it, because there's no discernible vibrations coming through the bars or the seat or the foot pegs. The only little buzz that you get occasionally is over 4,000 RPM through the seat. Now this bike comes equipped with proper old school suspension. You've got twin shocks out the back and a set of what they now call right way up forks, but seeing as what is the old upside down fork is now pretty much ubiquitous, perhaps old school right way up forks are now upside down. But by right way up I mean that the thin part of the fork leg or the tube is at the top of the triple clamp, whereas the fatter part is at the bottom, whereas on what is now conventional upside down forks the fat part is at the top and goes all the way down to the wheel, which has the thinner part that telescopes into the fatter part. Now for me this gives the front end of this quite a springy feel. The forks are not adjustable from what I can see, and if this bike is going to have an immediate weak spot for me, it's the front end feel. The forks are very, very bouncy, don't seem to be damped very well. You put the brakes on and they do dive quite a lot. I mean, I know it's not a sports bike, so therefore, you know, a bit of dive isn't necessarily a bad thing. But in this day and age of modern suspension, I think they could have done better there. You know, I would want a much better quality suspension feel. The twin shocks at the rear don't feel too bad, but if you get a sudden change of surface or like a bump, it does seem to take its time getting used to that, and it will translate into a kick up the arse. But for just normal riding like this, it's alright, it does the job. As does the front for that matter. And this road I'm on now is actually quite a bumpy road, which is why I come this way. But it's not, the bumps haven't really made the presence felt in an uncomfortable way. So yeah, the suspension does an okay job, just okay. It's not amazing, it's not terrible, it just does the job, which is fine. But again, for £10,000 plus I'd want better suspension than this. Now on the handling side of things, once it's running at a speed like this, the handling isn't actually too bad. I wouldn't bet my life on trying to get my knee down on it, which is just not that kind of bike. Don't be ridiculous, Dave. But at low speeds, that lack of quality up front kind of makes its presence felt. I mean, it's not the tyres fully pumped up, but at low speeds when you're manoeuvring through traffic or moving off from a junction, it kind of has a feel as if the front tyre's underinflated, and it isn't. So I don't particularly like that. It's not with the tyres, it's got decent Pirelli Sports comp tyres on it, and I've not felt any sort of vagueness in the corners from that. You'd notice poor tyres quite quickly on a road like I've just been on, so the tyres are okay. But at lower speeds it just feels, I don't know, if you've ever had an underinflated front tyre, it kind of feels a little bit like that. I would imagine you would just get used to it and it'd be like, it is what it is. once you're sort of up, you know, up over 20 miles per hour, it's actually fine. It lightens up a lot, and the sort of low centre of gravity of this bike starts to help you out a little bit, and it feels okay. Despite it obviously being the kind of bike that is a fashion accessory before it's a bike, which is a whole other topic, don't get me going on it, it would actually make a pretty okay, actually pretty damn good all day everyday rider, this. If you're into your classic looking twins but you wanted to use it as a main form of transport, you probably could. The seat's comfy enough, the riding position is very neutral, you know, you're not hunched over but you're not kicked out back, your feet are nice and straight down underneath you, and the reach to the bars is adequate, you know, it's fine. You could ride this all day and it wouldn't become uncomfortable, I don't think for a second. And on the brakes wise, those twin discs up front, they're not going to break your neck, but they do more than adequate job of stopping this beast. I've actually looked at what it weighs, but it doesn't feel particularly heavy, so I'd have to guess at somewhere around maybe 180 to 190 kilos or something like that. But with it being such a low bike, you don't really feel it. I mean, you've not got the initial bite and feel of, say, a set of Brembo brakes, which is what you want on something like the Street Triple or the Speed Triple. But on a bike like this, you're not going to be hitting the sort of speeds where you want that fine control, and if you ever had to haul on the brakes to stop you in a hurry, they will do that. They'll stop you perfectly well, as pretty much all motorbike brakes do these days. We've kind of just been spoilt by the likes of Brembo and things like that. It's all becoming too easy now. What other features does this bike have? Well, it's a cold November day today and my hands are nice and toasty thanks to the included 2 setting heated grips. They're doing a very, very good job of keeping my hands warm. It's actually quite nice to be on a bike with some old school analog looking clocks on it. In this day and age of the TFT and LCD screens, it's quite nice to see that again. Although I do keep getting the RPMs mixed up with the speed, because that 30 for the 3000 just keeps making me think I'm doing 30 miles per hour when I'm not. I'm like doing 50 or something like that. Each of the dials has a little LCD display which contain quite a lot of information really. At a glance you can see quite a bit of what's going on. For example, the ABS brakes active. I'm in second gear. I've done 301 miles on the odometer, which I can flip between 2 trip settings, which includes current MPG and average MPG. Average MPG, which by the way is 61 at the moment. That's just because I've been pootling around on roads like this. And the time. I've also got the tank range, which is saying that I've got 154 miles at current MPG, which it actually said 153 when I set off from Manchester about half an hour ago. So obviously it's MPG is going up because I'm riding it more sensibly than the last person who rode it. It's telling me what my fuel status is, which is full, and it's also telling me that I'm in the road map, which brings us to the, oh god, here we go, modes. This bike has modes. It has 2. It has road and it has rain. That's all you need to know. And believe it or not, this bike even has traction control. which I have disabled, and you know it's disabled because it says so on the speedometer there. That orange light you can see is basically telling me that I have turned the traction control off. And it resets itself when you turn the ignition off. It reverts back to on, which if you're going to have traction control on a bike, then it might as well be on as not. I just wonder why this bike has traction control, really. It just seems that Triumph are putting things on this bike. I don't know, it just puts the price up, you know. Don't put traction control on it, doesn't need it. You know, have heated grips as an option rather than a standard fitting. You know, just bring it down below 10,000 and people might be more keen to pay it. Now for me personally, this bike really doesn't need traction control because it just doesn't have that characteristic of a bike that you're going to like accidentally spin the back wheel up. The only time I could see it being of any use is if you were to ride this bike through the winter, and it might do half a job of saving your bacon. So yeah, filter through here. So far I've only ridden this on little nice surface roads and country roads, but there comes a time when in every biker's life when you need to go on the motorway, so let's just see what that's like now. Right, so it's 6th gear. This is the first time I've been in 6 on this. It sits at 70 miles per hour at slightly less than 3,000 RPM. And in doing so, it's doing just shy of 60 miles per gallon. That's not too bad. Not bad gas mileage for 1200. Now you can probably hear I'm getting quite a lot of wind noise. But, and I've said this before on various other reviews, that a bit of wind blast isn't a bad thing. Too many people these days think you have to hide behind a screen. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you have no wind protection whatsoever, it's better to have none than a little bit. Because with none, the wind hits your whole body, head, shoulders, torso, guts, hits everything uniformly, and you don't really feel it. And I grew up in a time where motorbikes and wind blasts were pretty much synonymous, so for me, I like it. I do. It reminds me I'm on a motorbike. I don't want to be sheltered like I'm in a car. I want to feel the elements around me. I want to feel that I'm out here, not in a car. I'm out feeling everything. I'm part of it, which is why we all like bikes. Because it's that unique mode of transport where you are actually outside. Yeah, I'm not. I was expecting this to be quite a ponderous experience, really, but it's actually okay. The engine's thrumming away below me at 2,800 RPM. I'm holding the motorway speed limit, and it's comfy. I'm doing it at a reasonable MPG. Fine. Put a set of soft luggage on this and I'd go touring on this. If this was the only bike you had and you fancied going off touring, you know, you could do it easy, no problem. I don't know about 2 up, but you could certainly put enough stuff for one person to go on a camping trip on the back of this. Fine, absolutely fine. So even though this bike is aimed at like a heritage market of people who want to buy into a particular lifestyle, that doesn't actually make it a bad bike. It's a very nice improvement on last year's model. Well, the previous iteration, I did ride that one, the 900cc one, and this extra bit of an engine makes the job a lot nicer. It's I mean, that wasn't a bad bike to ride, but this feels a little bit more meaty in all the places you want it to be, but without feeling any heavier or any less comfortable and pleasant to ride. And like I said, it does a good job for all its pretensions of being an old bike, of being a nice, pleasant, everyday riding bike. So, what's there to like and what's there to dislike about the 2017 Triumph Bonneville T120? Well, in common with pretty much all modern Triumphs, the engine is the main sort of show. And I do like this little, well, this big parallel twin. It's going a long way to dispelling my prejudices towards this particular engine configuration. It's smooth, it's torquey, and the torque is very linear. It just sort of starts really low and just pushes you all the way up to this sort of theoretical maximum in one big shove. It's nice. Has a lovely sound. It's very comfortable. The handling's very good for such a bike. And despite my own aversions to the same, I think it actually looks quite nice too. It's got some nice features, and some features that it really doesn't need, such as traction control and a rain mode, things like that. But that just seems that they put them on now because they can. You know, people seem to expect it, whereas in the past you would just learn to ride the bike in all conditions. But looking on the other side of the coin, if it saves at least one life through not spinning out the back wheel on a patch of ice, then it's done its job, hasn't it? And all credit to it for that. I just get a bit snobby about traction control at times. I think it should be on super powerful sports bikes and super powerful sports bikes only. But yeah, perhaps there's a place for it on other bikes as well. Especially a bike as torquey as this, which I suppose could catch you out if you weren't careful. So, to flip that around, what's there not to like about the Triumph Bonneville T120? Well, for me, the front end. Not the way it looks and the way it feels. For the price it's coming in at, it should have a better quality front fork than it has. Or at least be adjustable to change the soft feel that it has. You would get used to it and it wouldn't be an issue. It's just a point that I raise as for the purposes of reviewing the bike. If you have this as your one and only bike, you would very, very quickly just adapt your riding style to it, and eventually you would ride a bike with a good front end and you'd think it would be absolutely amazing. Another thing I'm not too keen on is these mirrors. They are proper old school looking, because this is what mirrors used to look like. The old bar end ones were quite rare even back in the day. Back in the day. Bloody hell, I sound like an old man. But yeah, I think for the price point, a nice set of bar end mirrors like they have on the Thruxton wouldn't have broke the bank for them, and it would have improved matters a little bit. And you know what, I'm struggling to find anything else that jumps out as me as a con for this bike, really. Obviously you can't compare apples and oranges, so I can't compare it to my Triumph Tiger, I can't compare it to my Yamaha R1. So in isolation, this is a good bike. Handles well, has a lovely engine, and is actually quite fun to ride. I wouldn't particularly buy one, or definitely wouldn't buy one myself, because it's just not my thing. The style and the way it delivers its power isn't my thing yet. However, there'll come a day when I'm getting a bit too old to ride big, heavy, powerful bikes, and there'll be a day when I have to give up motorcycling. It's going to happen at some point, it must do, because you know, all things in life are inevitable, aren't they? However, before that day happens and I hang my keys and my helmet up for good, I would pick a bike like this and see out my twilight riding career with this, not so much the looks, but certainly an engine like this and a chassis like this. And yeah, I'd be happy on it too, because you don't always have to be firing everywhere with your arse on fire, do you? Not at all. And it's just starting to rain, if you can see it on the lens, so we'll wrap it up here, shall we? Let me know what you think in the comments. Throw me a like, and if you think this is okay, why not consider subscribing? I'm only a poxy little channel. I don't monetize, you won't see adverts. All you'll hear is me whittering on about motorbike stuff. If that's what you're into, give it a look at. Until next time everyone, ride safe, especially now that the winter's coming around. Keep your bike shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios, bye bye. Veefour Additional. This bike has now done over 300 miles, which now means it has unlocked the next level, 5,000 RPM, which I've just been finding out unleashes a bit more of something special. You can actually get on this bike a bit. Surprisingly good.